change your heart, change your life, change the planet.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Van Orden coming to you from beautiful Tibbetts Woods in Hoosick, New York. I just finished up a gorgeous 5-mile trail run, and now I'm going to take a little walk with the camera and discuss a positive attitude. Not just in life, but in racing, training, and just about any other area where you're going to bump into discomfort, where you're going to bump into challenge, where you're going to bump into life. What prompted this video was a race that I competed in yesterday and a conversation that I overheard after the race. This event is called the Mount Ascutney Hill Climb, and it's one of the toughest races in the Northeast. It climbs the auto road from the base of Mount Ascutney to the summit. It's 3.5 miles long, and it gains 2,287 feet in those 3.5 miles. So the average grade is about 13%, which comes out to about 670 feet per mile of vertical increase. It's relentless. And this is not my wheelhouse, meaning that I am better suited for either more gradual or more steep. But this 13% incline is an angle or a slope that I really struggle at. And yesterday going into the race, I knew that myself and many of the other competitors were beat up from the US Mountain Running Championships last week. Running up a mountain twice and then down a mountain twice really beats your legs to a pulp. So a lot of us went into yesterday's race feeling pretty beat up. So my goal was to run slower for the first mile and then try to even split for the remaining 2.5, meaning that I would keep the same pace throughout the race, because most people go out way too hard and then they slow down throughout the race. So their third mile is much slower than their first mile, even though it's about the same gain. So my goal in these types of races is to try to be consistent with my pacing and let everybody else have their race. So that's what I did. I ran the first mile quite intelligently, but didn't feel good. And as the second mile got underway, the 3 competitors ahead of me kept pulling away. And instead of me maintaining this smart pace, which is much slower than my normal pace to start this race, I slowed down. And when I saw that on my watch, there were all these voices of defeat. And one of them said, "You're getting old. You can't run like you used to in events like this. You're just old. That time is done for you." And I'm watching these younger guys pull away from me. And there was a moment of sadness and defeat. And as I tried to marshal myself on, there was just nothing in my legs. I couldn't even get my heart rate into a range that I normally race at. It was stuck in the low 160s. And in this type of event, it should be in the low 170s. So I was about 10 beats lower than normal. But my legs had nothing. They were just empty. And every step was a chore. And I started noticing myself going into this very typical state for me when this type of discomfort shows up. And I call it the writing the blog post state. Because what happens is that you start coming up with all the reasons that the race isn't going well that you're going to tell everybody else after the race. So you start writing the blog post. Well, I was tired from the week before, my legs weren't recovered yet, I really haven't been doing that much mileage. Last couple weeks have been in the 50s and have been really slow and gentle, so yada 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 yada. You write the post, you're trying to justify or rationalize why you're not meeting expectations, whether they're your own or somebody else's. And whenever I catch myself in this blog post state of trying to talk myself into slowing down and justifying that that is the right choice, I take a step back and I acknowledge that that's where I am and that this is not a conscious choice. I'm not choosing to be in that state consciously, but my brain is choosing to put me in that state. And when I say my brain, you have to realize that there are many different organs in the brain. It's not just one thing. We talk about it as if it's one entity, but just like we have a heart, a liver, a kidneys, a pancreas, skin, muscles, bones, etc., your brain has many different modules. And it's really an oversimplification just to call it one thing. So we've got a module that creates and processes visual information. We've got a module that creates and processes auditory information. These are our sensory cortices. We also have a module that processes emotionally salient input, things that could be threatening, things that could be dangerous, things that we need to remember. We've got a memory processing center, the hippocampus, this emotional center, which processes things that could be potentially harmful to us. This is the amygdala, linked to other parts of the brain as well. It's not the only part that does that. But you've got all these different modules. And one of the really important modules is this guy over here on the left side of your brain, in the front, which is often referred to as the interpreter or the narrator. And it's not really well integrated with the rest of the brain. It kind of lives in an abstract space where it likes to tell stories, where it likes to talk to us. And we listen to what it says because there's another module in the brain that can listen to our internal thoughts. Just as we have a module in the brain that can look at these abstract thoughts. We can actually see them in our mind's eye. So we've got modules that can observe, we've got modules that can speak, we've got modules that can create images, we've got modules that can create emotions that are totally unrelated to what's happening in the world and only related to something that we are generating in here, whether consciously or unconsciously. So the point of me going into all this is that when you find yourself in a situation like a race or anything in life that's really challenging and it's got you at the edge and the discomfort is maxed out, and you start to hear that blog post being written, you start to hear the excuses, the reasons, the justifications, and that narrator has come online and it's telling you stories which you then can share with the world around you. It's like, here, I've got a suggestion for you, try this one. And then you convince yourself that, yeah, that's right, that's what it is. That's why I'm in this position. That's why I feel this way. Because it's trying to make sense of things. And the way that it's trying to make sense of things, there's a snake just shot in front of me, is to keep your status constant. So if you have a particular identity that has a certain rank, that part of the brain is going to come up with a story that keeps you feeling like you belong at this rank. And also keeps you looking to others like you still have this rank. So that part of the brain, often called the psychological immune system, because it protects your identity, it protects your status. It's always working to come up with stories that keep you feeling like nothing has changed. But there's always some outside circumstance, some reason that you haven't performed at this rank. So that you can say, well, yeah, I still have that rank. It's because of this. Or to you out there, yes, maybe I got 4th place, which I did. That's okay because of these reasons. I chose to slow down. It's not because I'm slowing down, it's because I chose to. And had I gone full out, you would have noticed that I still had this rank. But yeah, it just wasn't my day, so I didn't go for it. So, how this relates to a positive attitude. When I found myself in that blog post creation, I take that observer, which I have developed in me. I call it the advocate. And I take that advocate and I step back a bit in my mind. And I say, okay, that's what the narrator is doing right now. It's doing its job. But that's not me in my entirety. And that's not really a representation of the world around me, nor is it a representation of my capabilities, nor am I experienced. But if I listen long enough, and if I believe it, if I drink the Kool-Aid, it's going to become my reality, and I'm going to incorporate that into my identity, and I'm going to incorporate that into my memories. So whenever that happens, it's like, whoa, okay, back up. That's about to become real. It's not real yet, but it's about to become real for me. And once it becomes real for me, once it becomes a memory, once it becomes integrated into my identity, I'm going to protect it, even though it's not true. And this is just a feature of the human brain. This is what that part of the brain does. And once you know this, you can catch it in action and step back and create a different experience without simply being a suggestion. It's got some good advice, and you want to listen to it, but you want to listen to it as just kind of like the suggestions that Google comes up with when you type in a word. You type in the first 4 letters and Google gives you suggestions, and you're like, no, none of those. And then you keep typing the word and you're like, yeah, there it is. Now Google, find this. But before you get all those letters typed out, it's going to suggest things. And before you have all the data about what's going on, that part of your brain is going to suggest, well, here's what's happening. It was this race. Or you didn't get enough sleep. Or you didn't eat the right breakfast. Or whatever story it comes up with, but it doesn't have all that information yet. But it's going to do a search based on a very small, limited data set. It's going to do a quick and dirty search. And if you believe that as the truth, then you've now created an identity, a little bit, based on false or dirty information, fake news. So what I do in those situations is to step back and say, okay, what's really going on in this moment, right now? And in that race, I did an assessment. Okay, what is my heart rate? Well, it's like 163, kind of low. Not super low, it's definitely uncomfortable, but not where I need to be. How about my legs? My legs are exhausted, okay? What stride are you running with? I'm running with my little metronome steps. Well, what if we try a different stride? How about your shoulders? Are they tight? Are you hunching forward? Yeah, I'm feeling some tension right in here. I can feel my shoulders kind of forward and tight. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pull our shoulders back, drop them down, bring our forearms up a little bit so our arms aren't hanging so much. And with the legs, okay, on those little steps, where's another snake? Let's see if I can get him. Oh, there you go, buddy. Anyway, I go through this inventory of how my muscles feel, how I'm using them, what position they're in, what range of motion I'm getting out of them, where is the engagement? Is it coming from my calves? Is it coming from my quads? Is it coming from my glutes? What is my core doing? And what stories am I coming up with over there in the left prefrontal cortex in that narrator? And how applicable are those stories to this present moment? Are they telling me that I'm old? Yeah. Are they telling me that the race is over? Yeah. How much of the race is actually over? 1.5 miles, okay? How far do you have to go? 2 miles. So you're not even halfway done yet, and you've already told me that the race is done, but it's not. So what can I do differently? What can I change in my body? What can I change in my form? And what can I change in my thoughts to create a different experience as I move forward for the remaining 2 miles. Because if I believe the story that my race is over, and I still have 2 miles to go, and I'm gonna be climbing 670 feet per mile for another 2, and I'm already done, that's just gonna be a sufferfest. And I've been in many races prior to developing this type of mental work where it was a sufferfest, where my brain told me the race was over early on, and oh my God, I have to endure it. But what it is that I'm really enduring is this state that is certain of what the truth is, and it's no longer open to new input. It's no longer open to experimentation. It says, I know what the truth is. I've done a quick and dirty scan, got all the facts I need, boom, here's the story, and go ahead and suffer because it's not gonna get any better. But I know that's not true, because the part of the brain, the amygdala, that starts to dominate the cognitive part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, it colors what that prefrontal cortex is able to do and what it's able to experience. So I know this because of the research that I've done, the study that I've done, and the practice that I've engaged in. I know this happens. My brain is swimming in glucocorticoids, or stress hormones, and they change the functioning of the brain. So I step back into an abstract space of knowing what a brain is like when it's not under stress. And I try to recreate that experience by hearing those stories, but not believing those stories. So what do? Shoulders were tight. Change the position, roll them back. Okay, legs not working. Quads. So let's try to shift into a different muscle group. Let's get our glutes engaged, all right? And that means I'm gonna be pushing off more behind me. I'm not gonna be just pumping up the hill, but I'm gonna be extending my leg more powerfully behind me. And what about my calves? How are they doing? They're pretty good, they're not so bad. All right, so we're really gonna toe off at the end of each stride. So here we go. This moment, right now, no story about the 1.5 miles that just happened. No story about the 2 miles that have to go. We're not gonna look at the past, we're not gonna look at the future. We're gonna be right here in this one, okay? And we're gonna keep experimenting in this one until we find a way to be physically and mentally and emotionally that allows us, because there's lots of different parts, to move powerfully for the remainder of this event. So I did this longer, more powerful stride, which seems counterintuitive because if you're exhausted, wouldn't a longer, more powerful stride tire you out even more? No, because I wasn't engaging those muscles. They were somewhat fresh. So I took on that stride, longer, more powerful, and felt better. I got faster. I looked at my watch. My pace was dropping. And my 3rd mile was a lot faster than my 2nd mile, because the first half of my 2nd mile I'd written off the race. But that 3rd mile I picked up the pace. Even though 1.5 miles in, I'm done. The race is over. But that was just a story. I had room inside of my body. I had room inside of my thoughts. I had room inside of my emotions. I just needed to explore it rather than going with the quick and dirty conclusion that the race is done. So it wasn't a great time as far as the actual time of the race, but it was one of my best mental races that I've ever run, because I took a mental failure and I turned it into a mental win. And I'm not going to tell you that the race was effortless from that point forward. It wasn't. It still hurt a lot. But I got my heart rate up into the 170s. And it felt better. I wasn't creating those stories of defeat anymore. And I didn't have the physical sense of defeat that I had earlier in the race. So I'm working harder. I'm using more muscle energy. I can feel the effort more. My heart rate is increasing, but yet I'm feeling better. We can move around inside of the experience we're having and have a more pleasant experience, even if the discomfort has increased. Because it's not the level of discomfort that matters. It's how you deal with the discomfort that matters. It's how you experience that discomfort that matters. So back to a positive attitude. How this showed up for me after the race was, I heard a coach saying to some of his athletes, you've got to have a positive attitude. You've got to keep a positive attitude, especially when it hurts, because those voices of quit are going to show up and you can't let them win. So that sounds great, but how do you actually do that? And who is it that has this positive attitude? And what does it actually mean to have a positive attitude? What do those words mean? If you watched enough of my videos, you'll know that I want to know what those words mean. So I looked them up. And here's what I discovered. That positive comes from the word posit, or positus in Latin, which means to put or place. This is where the word position comes from. So to posit means to put forth or to assert. And positive is essentially that which has been put forth, that which has been formally laid down. Because this word was originally used in Latin in a legal context. If something was positive, that means that we have agreed on it, it is settled, it has been laid down, and there's no further that it can go. It has reached its lowest energy state, which is a term that people in physics and chemistry like to use to describe a situation where it doesn't require energy for something to be in that situation. Like you can take a rock and roll it down a hill, and if it hits another larger rock, it can't roll down the hill any further, even though it's still on the side of a slope and it has massive potential energy, but it's no longer moving because there's another larger rock stationary that has blocked it. So it has reached its lowest energy state, even though it is not all the way down at the bottom of the valley. And that is what a formal agreement is. We come to some form of compromise where we say, all right, I can't get all the way down to the bottom of the valley, but I will give you this concession. And you give me this concession, and we agree, and now we are halfway down the mountain, and we're both okay with that. There is a rock there supporting us, so we're going to stay here. We have a formal agreement. This is a positive situation, right? So no more negativity. We got rid of the conflict and found a state of low energy where I'm not agitated, you're not agitated, and we have this position where we are both more comfortable than we were before. We are in a lower energy state. And how this applies to attitude, well, that word actually means the position of someone's body in a work of art, whether it be a painting or a sculpture. And this position reflects or implies a certain mental state. So the artist is trying to imply a particular mood with the position that they put the person in, whether it be a facial expression, whether it be a bodily expression, because the painting can't talk. The sculpture can't talk. It can't move. It's stuck, frozen in a slice of time. So the artist wanted there to be a sense of emotion, a sense of attitude by the choices that they made in positioning this particular figure in that work. So attitude also is about position, but position that implies a particular mental state or emotion? What is the position of angst? What is the position of failure? What is the position of discomfort? So if we take this into consideration, that positive really means to be settled in a low energy state. Doesn't mean you've come all the way down to the bottom and you're comatose. It just means that you're no longer working hard to be in the state you're in. And that attitude is about the particular posture that one has to reflect a particular emotional state. Well, then we can take those two concepts and we can bring them back into my experience and my process to show that a positive attitude is really about taking on a posture, taking on a form that is not defeated. Mile and a half into that race, if you were to look at a video of me running, you would see a face of defeat. You would see shoulders of defeat. You would see hips of defeat. You would see a stride of defeat. So my attitude or my body position would be defeated. And anybody that painted me or sculpted me or took a picture of me in that moment and then showed it to others, what is the attitude here? And they would say defeat or suffering or failure, anguish, pain, discomfort. It was clear. So a positive attitude is not about saying, all is good in the world, all is amazing, I'm happy, I love my life, I love this race, oh my God, I get to run. I'm a white male in America and I get to run for my leisure. I choose to run up this mountain. In fact, I paid to run up this mountain. What a privilege that is. That's not a positive attitude, because what you're doing is denying the reality of the discomfort. You're denying the reality that you have a brain that is still at least 50,000 years old as far as evolution is concerned. Hasn't changed much in the past 50,000 years. So your brain doesn't understand white privilege. Your brain doesn't understand modern convenience. Your brain doesn't understand that we live in a sanitized, technologically optimized world. As far as it is concerned, its clean, simple, quick and dirty heuristics or rules of thumb are built, optimized for really dangerous, uncertain environments. We still have all these biases and rules of thumb and these quick and dirty shortcuts. So being positive in that sense, meaning all good, doesn't really reflect the meaning of that word. Positive simply means settled in a low energy state, agreed upon. And attitude means not good or bad, but simply what is the physical state that one is in that reflects the mental and emotional state that's going on the inside. What does the body say about the mind? What does the body say about your feelings right now? So rather than doing affirmations of, I feel great, this is wonderful, I love this, I should be grateful and thankful that I can run today. Nobody's shooting at me. I have plenty of food. When this race is over, there's going to be abundant food at the finish line. There's going to be a car waiting to take me home to a house that has all kinds of modern conveniences, a shower, running water, a flush toilet. It's not bad. Because in that race, those primitive parts of your brain that deal with massive amounts of stress, that deal with all the biochemical markers of intense exercise, those parts that think that you're running for your life because your heart says you must be, because your sympathetic nervous system says you must be running for your life, why else would you have all these chemicals in your body from the exertion? Why else would your heart rate be so high? Why else would your breathing rate be so high? You must be in a life or death situation. So when you understand that there's a huge part of your brain that is taking this very, very seriously, then the idea of just whitewashing it with affirmations or a positive attitude not only does it not make sense, but it denies the reality of what you're going through. It denies the actual state that you're in and what you're actually dealing with. So, what is a positive attitude? It's taking an inventory. It's noticing that there are stories going on up here that are trying to protect you, trying to protect your status, trying to protect your rank, trying to protect you from danger. And that when you can step back from those stories, step back from the abstract world and get into this physical world that has a body in it, and you can tune into that body and you say, what is my body displaying right now? If someone were to look at my body, what would they see? What attitude would they see? And then start making some adjustments. Just changing the body changes the mind. And there are plenty of studies done on this. Amy Cuddy has a great book called Presence. Not a great book, it's a decent book. She's got some good research on power poses, which I have some videos on, and you can see Amy's talk on this on the TED YouTube channel. A very popular talk on power poses. How you move your body changes the chemistry of your body. When you're in a more confident position or attitude, you produce more testosterone, and the stress hormone cortisol declines. I just bumped into a hiker, so I had to take a little break. All right, so back to the chemistry of your body. It changes when your posture changes. So if you can imagine what you look like from the outside and you can tune in to your body, where is the discomfort? Where am I holding it? What parts are complaining? What parts are defeated? And say, oh, well, what if I change this? Boop, what if I change this? Boop, what if I change this? And even smile. I'm not talking about creating a story or a narrative that is now about a great world, rather than a narrative which is about the world falling apart, the blog post mindset. It's not that at all. It's not abstract. It's simply smile. Why am I smiling? No reason at all. No story attached to this smile at all. That's the great thing about your body. I can do this, and I don't need to have a story. I can move my hips. I don't need to have a story. I can put my shoulders back. I don't need a story. I can smile without a story. And that's not a fake smile. It's a real smile. I can smile for no reason. And when I smile for no reason, it's not that I'm thinking that everything is suddenly good. There's no story. It's that I have agreed that this moment is the one that I have to work with. That is the formal agreement. That is the position that I am taking. That's the positive part. I'm agreeing that right here, right now, is the place where I'm going to do my work. Is the time and place where I'm going to run this race. No other place, no other time, no other body. Just this one. Okay, legs are feeling tired. Great, that's what we're going to work with. Let's find the lowest energy state we can inside of that experience. And that might mean that we actually move faster. Kind of funny that way, but it works. So, positive attitude. Agreeing to be in this position, this time, right here, and agreeing to find the lowest energy state you can right here and right now. Attitude, then repositioning your body to allow for that low energy state to occur. So that's what a positive attitude means. If you want to go way back in time and look at the real, true, original meanings of those words, rather than the very loose, overgeneralized, or broadened meaning that we have now. Those words really don't mean much. Have a positive attitude. What does that mean? And how do I do it? And if you don't do it, if you don't have a positive attitude, they tell you it's your fault. But the people that are telling you this, they don't know that their brain is made up of many competing regions. All they know is that they have a sense of consciousness, and it seems real, and it seems like a singularity, like one thing. your consciousness is a collection of states. Get drunk and then be sober. Same person? If it was the same person, you could never use alcohol as an excuse for behaving a certain way. Or people that are hungry act really crabby, like that Snickers commercial where the diva is in the back of the car being real cranky and they give her a Snickers bar and suddenly it turns into a guy and now he's in a better mood. Okay? Our consciousness is dramatically affected and modulated by our physical experience, and that's mediated by different regions in the brain. So I hope there's some value in there for you. This is a long one, but it's a fun topic to explore, and one that I've had a great deal of enjoyment experimenting with in the midst of discomfort in my races. So if you have questions, comments, let me know. I'd love to hear them. And if you'd like more videos like this, support me on Patreon. It really makes a big difference and allows me to create more content like this and research the crap out of things, which is one of my favorite things to do. So I love you guys, and I will see you soon. Peace.